overcome them all. HopeNetwork.org/autism.
This overcrowded prison is a tinderbox. A place where killers, robbers, and rapists fight for space. And violence quickly turns into full-scale riots.
I live this nightmare every day.
Some inmates are trying to escape the war zone. They're taking college classes. But in this prison, studying can't keep them safe.
See, I have to live first before I can graduate.
Trouble is all around you at all times. It's a powder keg. Think about it. It is a powder keg.
Stay in school because it's hard on your arm down here.
Welcome to Ironwood State Prison. Ironwood State Prison in Blythe, California. Located in the Southern California desert, Ironwood's isolated, hot, and dangerously overcrowded. More prisoners have just arrived. Dozens of them. With more inmates than cells, California packs this prison until bursting.
2 at a time, step out for pitching. Once you do your pitching, come back in the tank.
Built to confine 2,200 inmates, Ironwood now houses 4,700.
Criminal gang life.
That means the 4 housing units hold double capacity. And prisoners swarm the yards during rec. Overcrowding means one thing: violence. It's 11 a.m., and Lieutenant Sue Smith patrols more than 400 inmates out on the recreational yard.
Take that bandana off your head.
Their crimes range from aggravated assault to multiple murders. And officers say being packed together only makes them more hostile. Prisoners self-segregate into groups they identify as whites, blacks, Southern Mexicans, and others. The racial groups further divide into gangs. Gangs with a history of warring. But in this overcrowded prison, sworn enemies have no choice but to come face to face. Many gangs deal drugs, which rule the prison's underground economy. Disputes are a weekly occurrence.
I know what the potential is out here. I know what the potential of these guys are. They work out all day long. They're built. They're strong. And they'll fight. They'll fight till the end.
Last summer, inmates rioted on and off for weeks.
Central Control, be advised, I've got about 6 on 6 blacks. They need a code, 1 response.
I've seen inmates stabbed in the neck, throats sliced, multiple stabbings, inmates beat up just with fists. I've seen death.
These inmates must always be prepared for battle. And Lieutenant Smith stands guard to stop the next riot before it starts.
I have information that we are going to have problems on this yard, and it's going to be very soon. Whether it's today, tomorrow, or the next day, it's going to happen within the next couple of days. That guy right there, I want to know who that guy is right there. He just pointed at me. Yeah. Anything can happen at any moment. We could be standing here right now, and all hell could break loose. Line it up right over here, all you guys. Riots are always in the back of my mind when I walk around on the yard. You got anything in your pockets that's going to stick me? They have to be. It's survival.
But one place at Ironwood teems with even more danger than the yard. The gyms. One on each of the 4 yards. They house 120 inmates packed together, with only 3 officers keeping the peace.
This prison is so overcrowded that all of the facilities, all 4 yards, the gym has been converted into a housing unit for inmates. Can you put some pants on? You're supposed to be in pants. Working in the gym is very dangerous for an officer because of the closeness of quarters and 120 inmates being in here and walking between the bunks. At any given moment, anything could happen. Watch your back, gentlemen. You can never let your guard down, especially in the gym, because the inmates are so close to you all the time. You didn't hear the popo coming?
This 6,000 square foot open space houses criminals from opposing races and gangs, crammed together with no cells to separate them. And when violence breaks out, inmates will be ready. They arm themselves with crude and deadly weapons. Officer Michael Smith and the Investigative Services Unit, or ISU, have recovered hundreds of them.
Here we have several weapons that we've discovered throughout the years here at Ironwood, but it kind of shows how ingenious these guys are when it comes to creating weapons within a facility. This is kind of an interesting weapon. We call it the carrot weapon, and it's a toothbrush filed down to a point, and it was inserted into the ground. As you can see, it was wrapped with a lot of shrubbery. It just looked like a weed on the yard. Inmates know where it's at, or the inmates who made it. So it looks like that. If a riot kicks off or something spontaneous happens, they need to retrieve a weapon quickly. They can go to that area, find this weed, pull it up, and they have an instant weapon. Some of the more dangerous ones, and we refer to them as bone crushers, big weapons like this, large piece of metal stock. Bone crushers typically create a puncture-type wound. We also have a tomahawk-type weapon that would cause a large slicing wound or an incised wound. Very painful, causes a lot of bleeding, made of razor blades.
Weapons like these aren't just used on enemies. Racial groups and gangs will stab members who don't follow rules. New inmates quickly learn race determines who they wreck with, walk with, and who they obey. 22-year-old Roger Cerna has been at Ironwood for 3 months. He hangs with the whites. First arrested at age 18 for a minor drug charge, Cerna took a violent turn when he assaulted an acquaintance.
I'm in prison for attempted murder. Essentially, someone tried to snitch on me, and I decided to take it into my own hands to relieve this person of being able to snitch again.
The courts gave Cerna a 7-year sentence. He's determined that this prison stint will be his last.
It's a vicious cycle. There's nothing good about this cycle. Released to 3 places: jails, institutions, and death. If I don't break this cycle, I could end up back in prison shortly after I parole. I could be 44 years old.
Gang specialist Mike Smith gets word. There's a fight on Ironwood State Prison's A yard. 3 members of a Hispanic gang attacked a rival gangster. Officers ordered the 200 inmates in the yard to get on the ground. Staff cuff and cage the attackers for questioning. It's now up to Smith to find out what happened before the violence spreads.
Where do you live on the street? What's your name?
Living Diamond
Diamond?
Yeah.
Hispanic gangs refuse to discuss gang matters with outsiders.
How long you had your campo?
Oh, about a while.
Where'd you get in prison?
I think I've been in the streets.
So Smith looks for information elsewhere, on their skin.
You know, walk right out there. You know, tattoos, it's like a picture tells 1,000 words. Make sure the camera, please. Tattoos, especially gang tattoos, are going to tell you where he's from, who he hangs out with, the cliques within the gangs, what his moniker may be, who may have been killed that are his friends. It's going to give you a broad spectrum of gang intel. You got this on the streets, huh?
Yeah.
You have any idea what it means?
No.
Why would you put something on your body you don't know what it means?
I just like it. Everybody else had it.
Each racial group and gang sport a specific tattoo design and style.
If you're talking about the whites, it's typically going to be skulls, demons, dragons. If you're looking at black tattoos, you're going to deal with a lot of probably monikers and or gang names. If you're dealing with Hispanic tattoos, you're going to see quite a bit of Aztec cultural tattoos, different symbols that mean different things within the Aztec culture that are adapted by Southern Hispanic gang members and used for their own terms.
According to Smith, this inmate's tattoos clearly identify him as a member of a Mexican street gang, something he'd never admit to an officer.
How long have you been a gangster? It's just a matter of practice. You got to read the tattoos. You got to look at all the fine, intricate detail.
Identifying the gangsters means Smith can keep a close eye on them. But that may not be enough to stop a riot.
710,
Dozens of gangs vie for power at Ironwood. Like the Skinheads, the Bloods, and the Crips. Inmates must obey the rules of their race and their gang, or they'll be beaten. Rule number 1. If one member is threatened, the whole group fights back. This old-timer knows the rules firsthand.
I came in crippin', I'm a crip. If you my homie, you my friend. Coming to butt with me? Man, I'm not gonna let you fight by yourself. What you talking about? You get into it with anybody, we all gonna get into it. This is a violent environment.
Inmate Donovan Green says he joined the Crips when he was 11.
What's up, love one? In the lifestyle we live, you have to earn your respect. And I earn mine through physical violence.
He's serving a 15-year sentence for armed robbery. Before that, he did time for carjacking.
I'm the difference between life and death, or, you giving me what I want or you making it home. So that's where the power comes in. It was a thrill. You just felt real powerful that you were untouchable at this particular time and moment.
But now, Green gets power another way, through education. He's enrolled in the college program at Ironwood.
I watch a lot of them come in, and Green's one of them. That was a little ragged on the edges, let's say. He was tied up with some riffraff or, guys that weren't all that. They were in mischief or whatever. And then all of a sudden he gets his college book and he takes a course and he does pretty well. Now he wants to go full time, and bingo, it's eye-opening.
Green's motivation? To show his daughter Eva that he can turn his life around.
She's my heart, yeah. I love her to death. I wish I could have been there. I wish I could have seen all of these years from her, from being a baby to a young woman.
After years of studying, Green could reach a major milestone in just 2 weeks: graduation. He hopes to receive a certificate in business studies and get to see his daughter Eva for the first time in over a decade. But something could stand in Green's way. He's still a Crip, and convict code requires him to fight if called.
Anything is subject to happen in prison at any given time. And if it happens, there's still things I'm supposed to do as a convict. So, for me, I know this.
And Green has a violent streak that could put everything in jeopardy. Just a few years ago, at another prison, Green attacked his cellmate for verbally threatening his life.
And I walked back, opened the cell. He was in the cell like I knew he'd be, and I immediately attacked him. I attacked him, I beat him, I stomped him. The cell looked like a slaughterhouse, puddles of blood on the floor, the walls. I tried to clean up the blood. They came, told me to back up, cuff up, took me out. He went to the hospital straight, I went to the hole. I knocked a tooth through his lip, so he's scarred for life. So anytime he looks in the mirror from here on out, he's gonna see me.
Green wants to stay out of trouble now, but in this prison, trouble might find him.
Trouble can come from anywhere. It can come from a person bumping into you. It can come from a person saying something negative to you, and it sparks like a wildfire. You know what I mean? It just take a spark and it can spread immediately.
Because this isn't college, it's prison. And life here comes with no guarantees. Not school, not safety, and definitely not peace. At Ironwood State Prison's Education Center, inmate Rajesh Surna hunts down the results of his placement test.
Excuse me, Mr. White. Looking for the placement test results?
There's good news and bad news. The good news is that for reading comprehension, you did very well on that. So that puts you in English 96, which is writing improvement.
Okay.
Okay? Then on arithmetic, you bombed. So what we're going to do is put you in Math 81, which is fundamental arithmetic, but it's actually basic algebra. Bad news is if you don't do well, you have to go home and face yourself. Me.
Thank you.
Well, thank me. Now, you thank me by graduating.
Come on, Lou. Run late, baby, cuz roll.
Start up.
Holly Bucks. Sociology 101.
Cerner starts his summer class tomorrow.
And here's the book, line 9.
Today, he gets his textbook.
Ready to do something with this class? Oh, man, you better get an A, man. You know Mr. White expects the big thing. All right.
Studying's critical. Pass the class, and Cerner can enroll full-time. Fail, and he's out.
Cerner can end up as either a career criminal or a productive member of society. This is probably a big turning point in his life right now.
But as a young inmate, Cerner might face opposition from older members of his white race, and it could get in the way of success.
It's not a written rule, but a lot of people are not all gung-ho about this educating. Did he have to ask one person for permission? No. But believe me, that when a guy comes up and says, hey, I want to go to college, there are going to be people that question. They're going to say, why? Why are you doing that? And that question in prison, when you're questioned, that puts you on the edge.
And at Ironwood, everyone's on edge. As temperatures rise, so do tempers. On Friday, June 1st, violence erupts. Over a dozen members of the Crips and Bloods gangs attack one another on B Yard. Within minutes, 145 inmates wage war. Officers use 5 rounds of 40mm rubber bullets, 3 canisters of OC pepper spray, and 8 OC blast grenades to gain control.
Today is June 1st, 2007. We got a riot inside B2. We're going to be doing the schematic. Inmate Martinez, 203. Yeah, I did. Inmate Martin, out of cell 103. Inmate Gaetan, out of cell 204. We have Mr. Pistachio, out of cell 140. Ooh, which one is this guy? Valencia? 230? Inmate Valencia, out of cell 230.
The inmates' weapons, anything within reach. Chairs, brooms, a cane, and even 2 homemade knives. Staff moved the 28 most violent rioters from their cell blocks into an isolation unit called administrative segregation. Officers strip search the inmates. Prisoners squat and cough to show that they haven't hidden a weapon inside them. Squatting and coughing with a knife in the anal cavity could cause serious injury. When assigning cells, officers take special care to keep warring races and gangs apart.
Okay, I want to take you in a tank together and tell us what you're doing.
Either one of them, man, we represent the same.
All right, all right.
The prison places all of Facility B on lockdown. Inmates stay inside their cells 24 hours a day, released only for a shower every 72 hours. They can't even come out for meals. It's 12:30 p.m., lunchtime. Lieutenant Smith passes food to inmates through their cell doors. With 2 men crammed in each cell, tempers flare.
If you want to exercise, you're going to exercise in your cell. If you're going to wash your ass, you're going to wash your ass in your cell. When you get hungry, you better have something to eat in your cell, because the trays that they're going to bring you are inadequate. That's basically what lockdown means.
Lockdown should make Ironwood safer. But the longer it lasts, the more angry the inmates become.
That old criminal gang life.
Adding to the danger, rumor and plans for revenge spread quickly from cell to cell. The prison releases inmates from races not involved in the riots to do custodial work, but they do their own business as well.
They'll move around whatever it is they need to move, whether it be some sort of contraband like a weapon, drugs letter, and they'll move it from cell to cell block to cell block, wherever it needs to go. And then, in turn, they'll be paid for that.
Some workers spread gossip through the entire prison.
What happens now is that you'll get people that's working, and they'll go around and they'll tell one person one thing in another building, and when all the races come out, nobody knows the truth because they heard so many different versions of what happened. So now when the yard is released, you have a big melee over a mistake. When everybody come out, woo, Lord, it's gonna be crazy.
If violence spreads to other yards, it could jeopardize graduation day.
Big dog. Hey, Green. I got something for you.
On D yard, Donovan Green stays positive. His grades are in. He passed and can graduate.
Yes, sir.
Looking out, man.
Good. Everybody else knew I had the potential. Me, I was doing worldly things, so yeah. I ain't never been no dummy though, but yeah, I'm real proud of myself. It seemed like, why couldn't I have been doing this forever? I'm getting ready to get copies. One goes to my daughter, one goes to my mother, one goes to my father, then there's my grandmother, my aunties, so.
But Jim White knows it's too soon to celebrate. If the Crips Bloods warfare spreads to Green's cell block, his gang status requires him to fight. And a single violent incident would cost him graduation.
3 years ago, we had a big incident on the yard, and I lost like 40 guys in one night, like that, 40. Green could possibly, because of an incident wherever, be standing there, and he could lose it with his family getting ready to come out to see him graduate. And the risk is the possible loss is not completed, and through no fault of their own. When you get through with everything stacked against them, the final one they have no control over. None.
And Green stands to lose more than a diploma. His credibility with his daughter depends on his success in school.
Here's my baby. She was 2 years old when I left. It's just my mini-me. She's my heart, I love her to death. I send her my grades, my certificates, my awards, and I constantly discuss with her, and I tell her, if you're doing bad, when I come home, I'm not going for it.
If he stays out of trouble, Green gets released from prison next year. But he knows he could get caught up in violence, even against his will.
I'm out walking on a thin line or age yells at all times, because at any given time, anything can happen. You know what I'm saying? To really mess off what I'm trying to do. But I gotta understand these are the things that's necessary for survival. So yeah, every day I'm praying and hoping that I can make it through the day peaceful. I can make it through the day, close the door, one more day is over with, I'm one day closer. You know what I'm saying? With every day.
With graduation just days away, Green tries to lay low and hopes nothing gets in the way. In the wake of the B-Yard riot, officers at Ironwood State Prison brace themselves for the next wave of violence. The most dangerous location? The gym. Without cells to control the inmates, a fight here could turn into a 120-man war. To keep the peace, inmates create their own boundaries. Boundaries that are invisible, but if crossed, could be deadly.
In this gym, we're segregated by race. First 3 sinks is blacks, and the last 4, that's for the Hispanics and the whites. Then you got the toilets. This side is for Hispanics and the whites. This is ours right here. These are our showers. The Hispanics and the whites are on this shower. Then this is our shower with the blacks. And then it's another room where we can't walk through the bunks. A riot can get started over that because the person might feel disrespected. This is where, whenever it goes down in the yard, like a riot goes down, this is where it starts.
Since unwritten rules govern every aspect of life in the gym, Roger Cerna must learn them quickly It's now his home. Staff transferred him to the gym and gave his cell to a new arrival.
When I got the news that I was going to be moving to the gym, I was infuriated. I wanted to lash out. I wanted to do everything I could in my powers to not go to the gym. I was telling him, get the sergeant, let me talk to the counselor.
When they told Cerna he had to go there, he literally came unglued. And the anger was that I think he finally had established in his mind that he was going to do certain things positive. And then, through no control of his, somebody came in and pulled the rug out from under him.
The timing of the transfer couldn't be worse. Cerna's future in the college program depends on passing summer school. But the crowded, noisy gym makes studying hard. Still, he's determined to succeed.
I had my cellmate, Mr. White, who was, he told me every time the college subject was brought up between the two of us, you're going to do fine, I'm not worried about it. And after hearing that enough times, whether he's there or not, whenever I sit down to study, I sort of hear him, oh, you're going to do fine, don't worry about it. And I just sort of, I smile to myself and I go back to work.
But White worries Cerna could get caught up in racial politics.
Now, I'm not there to keep an eye on him. And he is a young person that's impressionable. So now the people that are giving the impression may not be the nicest apples in the barrel. And in that gym, there's a lot of scrap.
Surrounded by rival races and gangs, Cerna's got more to fear than failing grades.
The gym is just madness. And things happen in the gym. I mean, it's a powder keg. Think about it. It is a powder keg. The gym is a perfect place for something to erupt.
Officer Smith's doing all he can to prevent further violence at Ironwood. The key, determining the cause of the riot on B facility. He collects clues from inmates' mail.
Well, we search mail because it's the biggest source of information. Inmates have to communicate with the outside world. Being that they're on lockdown, they won't be able to use the phones. So they're going to write out to their people. And hopefully we'll come across a letter that explains what happened and give us some clues.
Hundreds of letters have been written in the days since the riot. One of them offers insight.
Well, here's a little something.
It's a letter from an influential crip.
It says, we're on lockdown right now for some bull. Some dumbass Harlem got me caught up. They let it from BPS hit the line with thumbs down, thumbs turned down, and whacked out on his face. Thumbs down, thumbs turned down, and whacked out on his face? I don't know.
It's a puzzling clue, but the meaning isn't completely lost on Smith. He knows that a thumbs up is a crip hand sign.
Thumbs turned down and whacked out on his face.
Smith and his lieutenant study a chart showing the placement of key players in the riot.
It kind of took off in between Bravo 3 and Bravo 4.
Bloods are in red, Crips are in blue.
Obviously, it's a blood crip issue. And he got scattered.
There's a blood that just got to Ironwood, who is in the thick of it. Smith suspects that the thumbs down clue, whatever it means, may have to do with him. The best way to find out? Search his cell. Catching an inmate off guard can be dangerous, especially when inmates have been locked down for 16 days. And may be in no mood to cooperate.
Lockdown ain't no joke.
So the officers plot every move.
So we're going as fast as we usually do. Keep your safety in mind when you get to that door, because you never know what to expect when you get there. Okay? All right.
The officers brace themselves to enter full force.
You guys ready? All right, let's go.
Officer Mike Smith and his team storm into B facility at Ironwood State Prison. They raid the suspect's cell, looking for any links to the riot.
Sit up. Back up slowly.
Officers remove the suspect's cellmate first.
Stay there on the bed, don't move.
Then, Smith goes after his target. A new inmate Smith suspects started the violence. He's a member of the Bloods, arch enemies of the Crips. The inmate refuses to let his face appear on camera, but Smith gets a good look. And right away, a tattoo on the suspect's face gives him all the evidence he needs. Inked on his cheek, a thumbs down sign, matching the clue in the letter.
We just pulled this inmate out of the cell, and immediately I saw a tattoo on his face with a thumbs down, and I understood what the letter meant.
The tattoo mocks the Crips' thumbs up symbol, provoking a fight. But on Ironwood's overcrowded yard, it didn't take long for the fight to turn into a war.
The issue was a disrespect issue between two sets. One Crip set, another Blood set. One of the signs for the Crip set is a thumbs up. The disrespecting sign is the thumbs down. So we believe this is the foundation for the riot.
With the cause of the riot now known, staff and locked down. After weeks in confinement, it can't come soon enough for inmates. For Donovan Green, it means college graduation can go on. First, a lot of work must be done. 5 a.m., inmate crews paint, clean, and iron gowns. 7:30 a.m., staff hang banners, decorate,
Let's put it over in that corner.
and lay out diplomas.
Why would we proud? I'm feeling very nervous, butterflies in my stomach. It's here. Today is here. It's come. Worked hard and finally about to pay off.
Remember, keep your eyes open. Because we only do it one day.
Yes. Okay.
From a personal point of view, these are all my kids.
2, 1. Good. All right.
I don't like to go to graduations. And not because I'm ashamed of them, but it's their day. So we've accomplished, I say we, I have a great crew working for me. All inmates, no staff. I have a great crew that's I'm very proud of.
At 8 a.m., the inmates' families start arriving.
I haven't seen my daughter in 11 years, my mother and father. So for me, honestly, it's kind of overshadowing the graduation. My anticipation to see them, to hold them, is really almost indescribable. I'm extremely happy, I'm ecstatic, my emotions are running amok, but I feel real good.
Their moment has arrived.
And it's on now.
Yeah, it's time.
It's time.
Ready? Are you ready?
Green walks in and catches the first glimpse of his daughter in 11 years. Warden Deborah Dexter welcomes graduates and guests.
I am just so very, very proud. Just grateful that you came out to support and to honor these men that have overcame a lot of obstacles to be here today.
These men are all criminals. But today, they're honored college graduates.
Order, arms, side, face. Forward, march.
Donovan A. Green, Business Studies Certificate.
Now, the part that everybody here has been waiting for. I am very pleased to present to you the class of 2007.
And now, the real reward for his hard work.
It's in heaven, you know. My baby, it's been a long time. I've been waiting for this. It overshadows everything. Look, I'm gonna give you mine, I want yours. So now you gotta work.
Yeah, I'm real happy for him. Like, cause now he got something to really concentrate on. Just focus on that instead of doing bad. Other than that, all I can tell him is good going back.
Visiting time is over.
Love you, baby.
I love you more.
Yeah.
Can we take him with us?
Yeah, I wish I could go.
Graduation gave Green and the other inmates a break from the grind of prison life.
Love you.
But now, they return to reality. A life filled with strip searches and metal detectors. These college grads are convicts first and foremost. And they are treated as convicts. It's the end of a chapter for Green, but the beginning of a whole new life.
I feel real good about the accomplishments I've made now and the man I've become now from the man I was then.
If all goes well, Donovan Green will be released back into society in less than 1 year. In the gym, Raja Surna's future looks far less certain. After just a week here, he spends more time hanging with fellow whites than hitting the books.
Living in the gym for me is like living in an animal house. So there's people who stay up all hours, sort of loud majority of the time. You know, I contribute to the noise a lot sometimes. You know, you just run around, go talk to a couple of people, get a card game going, and you know, just sort of hang out.
Even if he passes his summer school class, he wonders if he can handle a full course load in the fall.
I'm taking 1 class right now in the summer, and I'm going to be transitioning to 5 classes in the fall. For me, that's just going to be a really big wake up as far as how I'm going to study.
Jim White doubts Cerna can succeed in the gym.
There's no way you can finish 5 courses and do the 60 credits in the gym. There's no way. I don't care who you are. You're not going to be able to do it. So this move to the gym may have serious impact on the rest of his life.
Cerna's situation is serious, but he hasn't given up. Despite his circumstances, he still hopes he'll be one of the success stories.
I could look in the mirror and see myself in a cap and gown. As funny as that might sound, I really see it. If I put my mind to it, I'll be there. I'd be enthusiastic about it. I'd probably be jumping up and down again at the top of my lungs about how happy I am.
But for now, Cerna is still an inmate in a hot, overcrowded, violent environment, living alongside convicts, gangbangers, and college students.
Support by the Hope Network Center for Autism. You can join us and be part of a mission that takes on the challenges, the barriers, the statistics, overcome them all. HopeNetwork.org/autism.
This overcrowded prison is a tinderbox, a place where killers, robbers, and rapists fight for space. And violence quickly turns into full-scale riots.
I live this nightmare every day.
Some inmates are trying to escape the war zone. They're taking college classes. But in this prison, studying can't keep them safe.
See, I have to live first before I can graduate.
Trouble is all around you at all times. It's a powder keg. Think about it. It is a powder keg.
Stay in school because it's hard on the yard down here.
Welcome to Ironwood State Prison. Ironwood State Prison in Blythe, California. Located in the Southern California desert, Ironwood's isolated, hot, and dangerously overcrowded. More prisoners have just arrived. Dozens of them. With more inmates than cells, California packs this prison until bursting.
2 at a time, step off the kitchen. Once you do your picture, come back in the tank.
Built to confine 2,200 inmates, Ironwood now houses 4,700.
Criminal gang life.
That means the 4 housing units hold double capacity. And prisoners swarm the yards during rec. Overcrowding means one thing: violence. It's 11 a.m., and Lieutenant Sue Smith patrols more than 400 inmates out on the recreational yard.
Take that bandana off your head.
Their crimes range from aggravated assault to multiple murders. And officers say being packed together only makes them more hostile. Prisoners self-segregate into groups they identify as whites, blacks, Southern Mexicans, and others. The racial groups further divide into gangs. Gangs with a history of warring. But in this overcrowded prison, sworn enemies have no choice but to come face to face. Many gangs deal drugs, which rule the prison's underground economy. Disputes are a weekly occurrence.
I know what the potential is out here. I know what the potential of these guys are. They work out all day long. They're built. They're strong. And they'll fight. They'll fight till the end.
Last summer, inmates rioted on and off for weeks.
Center control, be advised, I've got about 6 on 6 blacks. They need a code, 1 response.
I've seen inmates stabbed in the neck, throats sliced, multiple stabbings, inmates beat up just with fists. I've seen death.
These inmates must always be prepared for battle. And Lieutenant Smith stands guard to stop the next riot before it starts.
I have information that we are going to have problems on this yard, and it's going to be very soon. Whether it's today, tomorrow, or the next day, it's going to happen within the next couple of days. That guy right there, I want to know who that guy is right there. He just pointed at me. Yeah, anything could happen at any moment. We could be standing here right now, and all hell could break loose. Line it up right over here, all you guys. Riots are always in the back of my mind when I walk around on the yard. You got anything in your pockets that's going to stick me? They have to be. It's survival.
But one place at Ironwood teems with even more danger than the yard. The gyms. One on each of the 4 yards. They house 120 inmates packed together, with only 3 officers keeping the peace.
This prison is so overcrowded that all the facilities, all 4 yards, the gym has been converted into a housing unit for inmates. Can you put some pants on? You're supposed to be in pants. Working in the gym is very dangerous for an officer because of the closeness of quarters and 120 inmates being in here and walking between the bunks. At any given moment, anything could happen. Watch your back, gentlemen. You can never let your guard down, especially in the gym, because the inmates are so close to you all the time. Didn't hear the popo coming?
This 6,000 square foot open space houses criminals from opposing races and gangs, crammed together with no cells to separate them. And when violence breaks out, inmates will be ready. They arm themselves with crude and deadly weapons. Officer Michael Smith and the Investigative Services Unit, or ISU, have recovered hundreds of them.
Here we have several weapons that we've discovered throughout the years here at Ironwood, but it kind of shows how ingenious these guys are when it comes to creating weapons within a facility. This is kind of an interesting weapon. We call it the carrot weapon, and it's a toothbrush filed down to a point, and it was inserted into the ground. As you can see, it was wrapped with a lot of shrubbery. It just looked like a weed on the yard. Inmates know where it's at, or the inmates who made it. So it looks like that. If a riot kicks off or something spontaneous happens, they need to retrieve a weapon quickly. they can go to that area, find this weed, pull it up, and they have an instant weapon. Some of the more dangerous ones, and we refer to them as bone crushers, big weapons like this, large piece of metal stock. Bone crushers typically create a puncture type wound. We also have a tomahawk type weapon that would cause a large slicing wound or an incised wound. Very painful, causes a lot of bleeding, made of razor blades.
Weapons like these aren't just used on enemies. Racial groups and gangs will stab members who don't follow rules. New inmates quickly learn race determines who they wreck with, walk with, and who they obey. 22-year-old Roger Cerna has been at Ironwood for 3 months. He hangs with the whites. First arrested at age 18 for a minor drug charge, Cerna took a violent turn when he assaulted an acquaintance.
I'm in prison for attempted murder. Essentially, someone tried to snitch on me, and I decided to take it into my own hands to relieve this person of being able to snitch again.
The courts gave Cerna a 7-year sentence. He's determined that this prison stint will be his last.
It's a vicious cycle. There's nothing good about this cycle. Released to 3 places: jails, institutions, and death. If I don't break this cycle, I could end up back in prison shortly after I parole. I could be 44 years old.
Gang specialist Mike Smith gets word. There's a fight on Ironwood State Prison's A yard. 3 members of a Hispanic gang attacked a rival gangster. Officers order the 200 inmates in the yard to get on the ground. Staff cuff and cage the attackers for questioning. It's not